So the other day I was talking to a fellow axe enthusiast about grain orientation in axe handles. So the ideal is for your grain to run from the back of the eye to the front of the eye with as little grain runoff as possible throughout the handle. So that's what I strive for, and that's what I try to achieve. Now it is true, you're always going to have some curvature of your grain because the wood grows in a round tree, you know, they don't come in squares. So it's very hard to get exactly straight. But my interest in different grain strengths really got started a while back when I ordered a custom hammer. When I opened the box, it was beautiful. The fit was just right in the handle, the balance, everything about it was great. Out of habit, I checked the grain orientation. To my surprise, it was the exact opposite of what I would have expected it to be. I started checking all my hammers, and to my surprise, almost all of them were running the exact opposite direction of what you'd be looking for in an axe handle. So with a hammer handle, if you think about it, you're going for the flex, the force is going to be this way. It's going to be going this way. When you come down on an anvil or whatever, the handle's going to want to flex back. So if you think about it like a bow. So when you're making a hickory bow, you want the grain to run this way so that when you're pulling it, you're pulling it with the grain, or the grain can flex this way. That's the ideal. So for a hammer, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for that flex to be this way with the grain. Now obviously you're going to have some hammers. I've replaced some hammer handles and got some new hammers in, and I have found some that are running this way. But in general, what you're looking for in an axe is for it to be running this way. Now that's kind of interesting. I think, I'm quite sure, the main difference between a axe handle and a hammer handle is that, see here, we have this curve here. On most axe handles are going to have a more curved handle. So if the grain was running this way, you'd have more chance for break off. Like this part right here could just crack off. And I think that is actually the main reason that you want the grain running this way. Not so much the fact that it's going to break this way when coming down on something that you're chopping. So also with axes, you're more likely to have this stuck in wood and be pulling on it, flexing on it this way, whereas with the hammer, that's not going to happen. So once again, if the force is this way, then you would want it to be able to flex a little bit. So what I'm going to do here, the plan is to do some testing. This is not to change anything on our ideas about grain orientation. It's simply mostly for edutainment. So what I did is I cut several different hickory planks or pieces here. This is not the size that I use for handles. This is much smaller. This is 3/4 by 2, and got several different grain orientations here. I have pretty much flat sawn. I have quarter sawn, which would generally mean that your grain's going this way, and then some where it's going to go this way, and then some with knots, so that we can see how that works out. So we're going to give this a try and see what we find out. Now, I've never conducted an experiment like this before. It may not be done with the precision and accuracy of a lab-type experiment. However, this should give us something to think about. So bear with me while I come up with the best way of doing this. One of the first things that we're going to need is some weight to hold the wood pieces down. This is going to be like... Okay. I was afraid of that. So we rigged up the anvil, and we took the junkiest quarter sawn piece we had full of knots, and we are able to get it up about 250 pounds, which lifted the anvil off the ground, and it hasn't broken yet. So we're obviously gonna need something with a little more weight. Now we got her hooked up to the bush hog. Okay, so 18 inches apart, 3/4 by 2. We're picking up the back end of the bush hog right at 400 pounds. So the good news is if you own a trekker and you need to pick your bush hog up, simply slide it under the back support and winch away because you won't break it. So now we're gonna have to come up with some other way of getting a little bit more pressure, and I'm afraid our scale might not be able to go that high, but we're gonna see if we can come up with something else. Okay, so now we have the chain under the lift arms and under the drawbar, and we have it all configured here. At this point, I think it would be safe to just call this rigged. But we're gonna see what happens and see if we can get this silly board to break. So like I said, we got knots in here, and it's a pretty serious knot right there, and everything else. But let's see what happens this time. Ah! There we are. So you can see, nice break there at last. Now this one got up to about 375 or so, and I think that was because it's on the full 24 inches as opposed to earlier we had it up to 400 but just on 18 inches. So that obviously makes quite a bit of difference, just a little bit out. So anyway, I was really expecting it to break at that knot right there, and it didn't really do that. It just splintered off like that. So let's try the next one and see what happens. Okay, so this one, grain running pretty much this way. The thing about this one is it has some pretty severe runoff. So the grain's, you know, going about like that. It's not real, you know, too bad, but it's definitely running off. So I'm going to be interested to see what happens with this one. Okay. This one made it to 480. So with quite a bit of runoff of grain split off, 480 on 24 inches of 3/4 by 2, and it didn't just break all at once. It just cracked, and so the only problem is we're getting heavier. You know, it went from the last one, I don't remember, what was it? Did you write it down? Yeah, 375 to 480. And I'm assuming straight grain with no runoff is gonna be even more. The reason I can't continue the experiment like we were doing is because the last one broke my scale, which is really sad. I guess what we're gonna do now is just hook it up and go up with it and just see, you know, just look at it, just watch it flex, and we'll get an idea. But I am assuming it's going to be a lot heavier than the last two. So anyway, if you have a 24-inch hickory handle, even with it being runoff, you got 480 pounds of side to side being able to pull on it with, bear in mind, this is much thinner than a handle would be in every way. So you got a lot of strength to work with, even on some runoff. Okay, so our next one, and probably last, is straight grain, pretty much. By straight I mean, you know, flat sawn, and straight also being very little runoff. It's a pretty incredible bend on that. I wish I knew how much it weighed, because it definitely pulls. I can feel it. I mean, this is a 3-ton chain hoist, and it's, you know, you can definitely feel some pretty good tension. So let's see what happens if we can just keep going here. I heard a crack. Well, here we go. Oh, good. Okay, so one conclusion that I would draw is that this has a lot more spring to it. So when the grain's going this way, it's gonna be very springy and less likely to just break. That's what we're looking for. So here on this quarter sawn wood, it got to a certain point and it just snapped. So if we were trying to bend this piece this way, we would have the same problem. The grain's going this way, but we have a wider surface area, and that's how it normally is on an axe handle. It's going to be, you know, wider. So if this was like one of my handle blanks, which are thicker than this, but you lay your pattern on here and cut it out this way so that you have more wood to work with this way. So I think it is very important to be selective with your handle material. Obviously on most smaller axes, I don't think you're ever gonna see a difference, but I think you should orient them properly just in case. This video wouldn't really be complete unless we actually broke an axe. So I'm gonna donate one made a while back, about a year ago. And we're gonna hook it up. We don't have a scale, but we'll just watch it and see what happens. So let's try that next. Okay, this is kind of sad, but I guess I'll just like, yeah. Okay, here we go. Okay.